Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, guys, this is from ResearchGate. And I found this really interesting. The reading is going to be a little bit dry. However, I feel it's very important reading. Article dated May 2016. This is from Cultural and Religious Studies, May 2016, Volume 4, Number 5, pages 321 to 331. And then they've got a number there. I'm not reading. And I believe this is a journal. It's a study. You know Scientology's mad. Juridical status of Scientology in European case law. The jurisprudential path which led to the legal qualification of Scientology as a religion according to Italian law was very interesting. The problem concerned the lack of definition of religion and the fact that recognition as a confession gives a religious denomination several benefits such as political taxation. Furthermore, the absence of recognition had led to the possibility of considering normal activities of worship as criminal offenses, i.e., criminal conspiracy, abuse of the disabled, etc. The so-called long process of Milan, which lasted 20 years, however, officially recognized the characteristics of the religious denomination of Scientology. In this sense, the Scientology case can be considered a paradigm for a real understanding of the rights that our legal system recognizes in regards to religious movements, and in particular, the right of religious freedom and the principle of laicita. I'm sure that's Latin. Preliminary observations. Recent English case law concerning Scientology. Religious denominations are not a simple filter between the individual and the state, but stand out as social entities, constitutionally recognized and affecting the conduct of the individual. The problem with regard to the qualification is therefore focused on the possibility of acquiring legitimacy in the public sphere. The heterogeneity in the definition of the phenomenology of religion, as it is found in sociological studies, is currently lacking in the legal domain. At the regulatory level, in fact, the conflict only centers on the dichotomy between religious and sex. Where religions are well structured and socially accepted and acceptance is reserved, though differentiated from one country to another, whereas sects, whilst varying, are mostly incorporated but have a clear negative connotation. Jur 322. Juridical status of Scientology in European case law. I would like to focus my brief remarks on the position taken by the jurisprudence in 3 European countries, Italy, France, and Great Britain, in court cases involving Scientology. The Italian case is the oldest. The Milan process was completed in 2000. The other 2 processes were in 2013. In the English case, the Church of Scientology was recognized as a religious confession, whereas in France, it was convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and labeled as a criminal organization. It seems to me that the Italian case can be then viewed as the trait de union between the three processes. In the French process, Scientology was charged with criminal offenses, whilst in the British judgment, it was acknowledged and recognized as a religious confession. As just mentioned, the recent English case in 2013 reopened an interesting debate on the concept of religion. It was discussed whether the services performed in the chapel and the performance of a wedding ceremony, remember the article I read to you guys? I knew that's what they were trying, could be considered as a form of religious worship. The problems faced by the court were inevitably conditioned by the question whether Scientology should be regarded as a religion. A complex investigation was then carried out, starting from a well-known case law regarding the Church of Scientology from 1970, which concluded by denying the religious character of the movement based on a traditional conception of religion. The Juridical case arose from a request by the Church of Scientology to have its chapel at St. Hill Manor, East Grinstead, registered as a place of worship under the Places of Worship Registration Act 1855. Such a status would have entailed tax benefits, of course it would, and other advantages, but the request was rejected by the Divisional Court and upheld by the Court of Appeal. With reference to the nature of Scientology, the judge commented, Juridical status of Scientology in European case law. I think I mispronounced it, whatever. This precedent was considered of paramount importance for the evolution of the issue. In 1974, the Immigration Appeal Tribunal, drawing on the Juridical case, ruled that Scientologists could not take advantage of the privileges granted in the immigration law to ministers of religion. As late as 1980, it was used to propose a definition of religion in the case of Ray South Place Ethical Society. The society, interested in the study and dissemination of ethical principles and the cultivation of a rational religious sentiment, had applied for the status of charity, qualifying as a religious organization. Judge Dillon referred to the comments of the Juridical case on what constituted a religion and noted that religion is concerned with man's relations with God, and ethics are concerned with man's relations with man. Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard. The two are not the same, and are not made the same by sincere inquiry into the question, what is God? Religion was then defined as something requiring faith in a God and worship of that God, which is the definition in English common law. The definitions of Dillon and Juridical were also still of fundamental importance in 1999, when the Charity Commission decided to reject the Scientology's application for obtaining the status of a charity. Rejected. The Commission concluded that the Church had not been established for the advancement of religion, because though it is accepted that Scientology believes in a supreme being, L. Ron Hubbard, the core practices of Scientology, being auditing and training, do not constitute worship, as they do not display the essential characteristic of reverence or veneration for a supreme being. I guess the United States didn't get the note, did they? It is clear, however, that the definition developed by the Juridical judgment in relation to religious worship was a theistic definition of religion anchored in anachronistic parameters, whatever that is. It is also well known that in English law, religion and rights share common characteristics. The law protects charitable trusts if the funds are directed towards the advancement of religion. At the individual level, it is recognized that individuals have the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion under Article 9 of the European Convention. They have also the right of non-discrimination on the grounds of religion or belief in accordance with EU Council Directive 2000/78/EC, and in accordance with national legislation based on the principle of equality. Because we know Scientology is all about equality, aren't they? Especially when it comes to women, especially when it comes to children. There has never been a universal legal definition of religion in English law, and experience across the common law world over many years has shown the pitfalls of attempting to attach a narrowly circumscribed meaning to the word. There are several reasons for this: the different contexts in which the issue may arise, the wide variety of world religions, the development of new religions and religious practices, and ongoing developments in the common understanding of the concept of religion owing to cultural changes in society. In order to settle the question posed by the Church of Scientology, the London courts found it necessary to perform a parallel examination of some foreign jurisprudence. Attention focused on two cases, one in the United States and the other one in Australia. The Aussies are onto these guys. In the first, Malnek versus Yogi, the issue was whether teaching in a public school of a course named The Science of Creative Intelligence, Transcendental Meditation, constituted a religious activity violating the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Yeah, United States should pay attention here. The judge took a different approach compared to previous cases, where a stricter theistic definition of religion had been adopted, in line with more recent jurisprudence, which meanwhile had moved towards a broader approach in recognition of the fact that adherence to the traditional definition would deny religious identification to the faith adhered to by millions of Americans. Not me. The first was that the system of religious belief is concerned with the ultimate questions of human existence, the meaning of life and death, the role of mankind in the universe, the proper moral code of right and wrong. Yeah, Scientology didn't get that one. The second was that the system of belief is comprehensive in the sense that it provides an all-embracing set of beliefs in answer to the ultimate questions. The third was that there were external signs that the belief system was of a kind which could be analogized to accepted religions. Such signs might include formal services, ceremonial functions, the existence of clergy, structure and organization, and attempts at propagation. Said every cult ever. These kinds of evidence were not to be thought of as a final test for a religion. Rather, they were features that recognized religions would typically exhibit. The significant contribution of the judgment to the development of the jurisprudence in this area lays in Judge Adams' attempt to adopt a comparative approach to the identification of a religion rather than a traditional definition based on the Judeo-Christian religions. In the Australian case, the Church of Scientology, according to the Victorian Payroll Tax Act 1971, requested an exemption from the tax on wages paid by a religious institution. The question considered by the High Court was whether the beliefs, practices, and observances, which were established by the affidavits and oral evidence as a set of beliefs, practices, and observances. LAPD is all about the affidavits. I don't know what that has to do with anything. It just seems like it ties in. Accepted by Scientologists are properly to be described as a religion. The court held that they were. The court held that it was to be recognized as a religion, stressing that. If you guys haven't figured out who created this religion yet, I don't know what to tell you. Being and that members of Scientology accepted and followed its practices because they perceived them as a means to give effect to their supernatural beliefs. As a result, Scientology had met the two criteria that had been previously identified. Meanwhile, while they're essaying children, just saying. In light of these important references to law cases, the English courts decided to carry out a review of the traditional dogmatic approach of the concept of religion, as it had been formulated in the Segerdal case. They thus attempted to identify the elements that characterize a religion, referring especially to the United States judgment. It was then stressed that one of the more important indica of a religion is that the particular collection of ideas and or practices involves belief in the supernatural. That is to say, belief that reality extends beyond that which is capable of perception by the senses. If that be absent, it is unlikely that one has a religion. I don't know what I think about all that, but anyways. Another is that the ideas relate to man's nature and place in the universe, and his relations to things supernatural. A third is that the ideas are accepted by adherents as requiring or encouraging them to observe particular standards or codes of conduct, or to participate in specific practices having supernatural significance. Obey, 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 obey. A fourth is that, however loosely knit and varying in beliefs, in practices, adherents may be constitute an identifiable group or identifiable groups. A fifth and perhaps more controversial indicum, Malnak versus Yogi, is that the adherents themselves see the collection of ideas and or practices as constituting a religion. Said every hive mind ever. They, however, added that none of these criteria are necessarily decisive of the question whether a particular collection of ideas and or practices should be characterized as religion. The assessment must be based on case observation, but there is no doubt that the most recent jurisprudential decisions provide an expansion of the concept of religion beyond the Segerdal case decision and conclude more correctly that Scientology satisfied all 5 criteria that had been identified. Where's my cha-ching? Cha-ching, cha-ching, ching, ching. Unless there is some compelling reason to support the contrary, the concept of religion cannot be confined to religions that recognize a supreme divinity. In my opinion, you guys, this sounds like a lot of gaslighting. However, I do find it interesting. This would be a form of religious discrimination unacceptable in today's society. Well, Church of Scientology would know all about religious discrimination, wouldn't they? They're into it. Leading to exclusion of Eastern beliefs, now commonly included as religious, for example, Buddhism as well as Jainism, Taoism, Theosophy, and part of Hinduism, which, by the way, all those religions existed before Christianity. The motivations of the English judgment appear, therefore, absolutely compatible with and overlapping Italian case law, in doctrine already largely developed in the 90s. It was in fact possible in the past to anchor the definition of religion to the existence of a transcendent God, like a white man with a beard. But the knowledge of Eastern religions has made this traditional approach anachronistic and outdated. It calls, therefore, for a new definition, more realistically responsive to changing social needs. Cha-ching, ching, ching. In March 2016, a Belgian court has cleared the Church of Scientology. Well, you know Belgium's not playing around anymore. Of forming a criminal organization over alleged fraud. They're not playing it anymore. The Brussels court, after a period of investigation that lasted about 20 years, cha-ching, ching, ching, declared inadmissible all the charges. Cha-ching, cha-ching, ching, ching, cha-ching, ching, ching, ching. Fraud, extortion, and violation of privacy. Yeah, they miraculously found they're not doing that. Isn't that amazing? Cha-ching! Against the church and rejected the request of the religious organization's dissolution. Wonder how much they got. Also, this latter process much recalls the arguments developed by the Italian courts. Now this should be interesting, because you know what's up there, you know. The long Italian process. In this case, the long process of Milan is of great importance, which after 6 different court decisions was concluded in 2000 and legally recognized Scientology as a religion in Italy. Wow. You guys know what's happening in the Catholic Church. Just think about it. The case was based on a series of criminal charges. You don't get crimes like when you have a multi-billion-dollar business, you don't get charged. You can hurt children, you can steal, you can lie, you can commit extortion, aiding and abetting, false imprisonment of adults and children. You don't get any penalty. The judgment of the Supreme Court in 1995 is of fundamental importance. It determined for the first time and in a decisive manner. Oh, sorry guys, sorry. I gotta back it up. I missed one. The long Italian process. In this sense, the long process of Milan is of great importance, which after 6 different court decisions was concluded in 2000 and legally recognized Scientology as a religion in Italy. The case was based on a series of criminal charges against some members of the church. Listen to this, you guys. Money makes everything, right? Conspiracy, fraud, extortion. What about the child SA? Doesn't exist there? After some contradictory rulings, the Milan judges became aware of the need to define the religiosity of the movement. i.e., that it should be considered as a religion if all the stated activities were qualified as normal religious practices. So, to me, that tells me if you just say you're doing the activities of church, then you can call yourself a church. So I wonder if I can call myself a church. The judgment of the Supreme Court in 1995 is of fundamental importance. It determined for the first time and in a decisive manner the need to assess the religious nature of an association which in turn related to and challenged any assessment under criminal law. It is then only from this standpoint that the problem focused on the religiosity of the movement as a sine qua non for the qualification of possible offenses under the criminal law arising from the actions of the group. This recognition has an indirect effect with respect to the violation of the criminal law. Really? You guys know Scientologists think that WOG law does not apply to them, which is a racial slur, of course. If a movement has a religious nature, it cannot be qualified as criminal. Really? Really? You guys know what that means? The judgment noted that if a group defined itself as a religious confession, the court has the obligation to check by referring in the absence of a legislative definition to the criteria laid down by the Constitutional Court in 1993. The Constitutional Court has specified that in the absence of an agreement with the Italian state, and in order to recognize the confessional character of a movement, it can refer to some guidelines, previous public recognition, statutes of the institution. Oh, I would love for all these people to read all the policies. Common consideration. It, however, pointed out the partiality of these criteria through the use of the adverb also, not excluding, therefore, a greater scope for interpretation. No way. And it is for this reason that the articles of the statutes of the association, which I'm thinking would be the policies, must be subjected to a thorough investigation necessary for assessing whether the articles are actually applied. Wouldn't you guys love to see Scientology have to show all their policies? Ooh, that would be awesome. The application of these rules of interpretation is vital in identifying if the goals expressed by the statutes are religious, though one could also argue the difficulty of differentiating this element from self-qualification, as it has been stressed in the judicial rulings. For a correct formulation of the problem, it is therefore necessary to verify the purposes set out in the statutes in order to control the degree of compliance with the activities actually carried out. So the law is supposed to verify the purposes in the statutes. So I'm thinking with Scientology it would have to be policies. You guys know they haven't looked. To control the degree of compliance with the activities. That doesn't even obey. In this case, to understand the structure of the religious movement was absolutely necessary not only for the assessment of tax crimes, but also for the contestation of the crime of association. Oh, LAPD would know about that, wouldn't they? Because once Scientology had been granted the nature of a religious belief, it could no longer be convicted of conspiracy. So some kind of like a loophole. Unless those belonging to the confession had changed by mutual agreement the statutory articles. So if they changed, in Scientology, if they changed their policies, which they'll never change, giving rise to a new purpose different from the original, the qualification of a religious movement is to be assessed according to nationally established criterion in the light of the constitutional principle of religious freedom, which is subject to well-defined limits, these being the fundamental limitations that constitute the essential conditions for the achievement of a peaceful coexistence of individuals in the society, the limits that are imposed by civilization itself and relevant essential values and constraints. Furthermore, there is a general limitation pursuant to Article 19 of the Constitution, morality. I would love to ask them or the states, wherever they are questioning Scientology, is essaying children moral? Inquiring minds really want to know that. And also, what kind of a church is sucking out every penny and every dime from their adherents? I mean, granted, Catholics do know about that, but Scientology takes it to another level. In subsequent case law in the same process, it was emphasized that in the absence of a definition of religion, it is very difficult to ascertain if a group of people calling themselves a religious movement do have such quality. The Constitution had opted for an extended concept of religion, as it is apparent from the choice of not using, in Article 8 of the Constitution, the noun religion. Boy, he's just going in. But the term confession religiosa, which identifies on a philological dimension, a group characterized by a common profession of faith. Me personally, I don't see faith in Scientology. I mean, they probably think of their beliefs in L. Ron Hubbard as faith. I don't see that as faith. My opinion. Two important considerations should be borne in mind. The Buddhist agreement, where the Italian state recognized as a confession a religious movement that does not presuppose the existence of a supreme being, and the Treaty of Friendship with the USA that requires qualifying as a religion any movement which is already so recognized as such in the United States. By examining specific statutes and their implementation as a religious practice, do they examine it though? Like, that's my question. It is clear that any religion, including Christianity, implements high levels of purification and aesthetic techniques, which, whilst they cannot claim to be scientific, do enjoy some objectivity. Most of the Italian case law and legal commentary conclude today that faith in the identity of a supreme being cannot be considered the only element concerning the idea of religion. From the examination of the judicial process, there is clearly a significant importance given to the principle of the effectiveness of self-qualification, a necessary but not sufficient condition for a religious group to be called a religion is to auto-qualify itself as a religion. That would be every cult there is, honestly. The direction taken by Italian jurists seems, therefore, prone to a kind of recognition based on the inductive method rooted in self-qualification. Yeah. The end of this long and complex process ended with the judgment of the Court of Appeals of Milan, dated 5th October 2000. As it has been pointed out in the judgment, the statutes of the Church of Scientology clearly defines the religious aims. Do they? Really? Told you guys, you know who created them. Religious aims of the association, the healing of the spiritual needs of the faithful through individual and collective rituals. What are the rituals? Please tell me what the rituals are. Working in clay. What's the other one they do? Screaming at ashtrays. I'm not trying to mock all the Scientologists. I'm just saying, what are the rituals? The treatment and protection of organizations that preach and practice the religion of Scientology. The establishment of training centers. Oh, are they training centers or are they schools? Interesting choice of words, isn't it? Wonder why this person chose training centers. Because I always thought they were schools. For the teaching and dissemination of the religion, the promotion and encouragement of the development of the Scientology religion and its rituals. I really want to know what the rituals are. Could somebody tell me? Auditing, I guess, would be a ritual. I don't know. The impossibility of defining in a rigid and unchangeable manner the concept of religious phenomenon linked to the evolution of forms of religiosity in different space-time coordinates is once again reiterated here. All religions were created by a slow evolutionary process. Were they? Is that why the Catholics are always changing their biblical verses? By a slow evolutionary process that progressively delineated their structure. I know what it means, I just don't know how to say it. Dogmas and rituals, and with reference to Scientology, the fact that its statutes have explicitly assumed these characteristics only in recent decades cannot act as a reason for denying its religious nature. Interesting. You guys know, I don't mean any offense, but you can tell he's writing it from a religious stance. You could tell. And, to each his own. I just find it interesting anyways, and it's very well written. The condemnation of the religious movement in France. Conclusion. A recent condemnation of Scientology in France. It's not condemnation, but, whatever. Which was confirmed by the Supreme Court in October of 2013, more clearly revealed, however, the problems relating to the protection of individual freedom. That's always the go-to. It's always rights to individual freedom, which none of them have. Most of them have no freedom. And they also use a right to practice their religion over and over and over and over and over. And they also fight back with, they say, defamation. That's all they do is defame other people, but, within EU structures, and in particular, the membership of new groups of a religious nature. The court has, in fact, confirmed the sentences for conspiracy to fraud and illegal pharmaceutical practice, not only against 5 Scientologists, but also against the 2 main French structures, the Scientology Celebrity Center and bookstore. The case dates back to 1998, when some individuals accused the church of having persuaded them to spend significant sums of money on church services using the personality test to bring them into the church. There are strong similarities to the Italian case, but the 2 case laws followed completely different paths. In France, the judges avoided any definition of religion, whereas Italian lawyers thought it to be a necessary condition for any evaluation, real and concrete, about the movement and its possible dangers. In the case in question, the prosecution focused on the personality test. Ooh, I bet you William Good would be interested in that one. With the exclusion of other tools used by the Scientology religion e-meter, purification rundown, religious counseling, etc., the court held that the fraudulent nature of the test, bam, is deducted from the scientific presentation of the same. Yeah, it's not scientific, which is used by people without any training in psychology. That's their modus operandi. The judgment noted that individuals using a philosophica or religious doctrine, which has a lawful purpose to intentionally deceive third parties for financial or commercial ends, are liable to prosecution for the offenses of fraud. United States government, FBI, Department of Justice, did you hear that? Did you hear that? They said individuals using a philosophica or religious doctrine which has a lawful purpose to intentionally deceive third parties for financial or commercial ends are liable to prosecution for the offense of fraud. How about that? The exercise or practice of a religion may therefore lead to certain members of the religious association undertaking deceptive maneuvers, to aim of which is to deceive bona fide third parties. Facts. LAPD, did you hear that? Are you all about it, or are you starting to have second thoughts? Because we know, like, you guys don't seem to be able to let your little fingers do the walking on Google. You seem to not be able to do that. The assessment of such deceptive maneuvers undertaken through the alleged practice of religion does not imply a value judgment on the doctrine professed by the religious association. That's a really good distinction. That's true. You see, but Scientology always wants to claim that, right? All the time. Because they don't have any other outs. It considers only the lawfulness of the methods used. That's how it should be. That's how it should be. It is important to reiterate that these problems stem from a misinterpretation of the relationship between religion and sect and the possible phenomena of deviance related to the latter. LAPD, did you hear that? Phenomena of deviance. But maybe you guys are into that deviant stuff. The French court incorrectly set the criteria by emphasizing the uselessness of qualifying Scientology as a legal entity, whereas such failure of classification led to the absurdity of having to assess the scientific nature of an instrument which is simply confessional. It's an e-meter. The investigation into the alleged or real scientific validity of an instrument, this being a purely religious one, cannot be analyzed with tools of a scientific investigation because it is related to a phenomenon linked to faith and the irrational. Is it? Is that why L. Ron Hubbard got, what is that called? He got the, what is that called when you own it? He got the, hold on, I'm going to look it up. I can't think of it right now. Well, they're calling it a quitclaim deed, but anyways, hold on, I'm going to look up something else. Oh, that's it. Okay, I couldn't think of it. Because I know it's like with songs, it's one thing, you've got copyright, and then with property, it's different. So is that, my question is that why Ron Hubbard in 1951, in that year, filed application for his first e-meter patent? U.S. patent 2,684,670, if anyone wants to look it up. Is that faith? Is that linked to faith? Let's go back. Is filing for a patent, is that linked to faith? I didn't do very well in algebra. Maybe I'm just, maybe I need some help or something. I don't know how to say this. In the juridical formulation of the offense of fraud, the demonstration of the intentional element is crucial. However, being a faithful believer of the doctrines of Scientology could not be invoked as an exception according to the Paris judges. The note of fraud is also difficult to identify, especially with regard to a sect. I disagree, but, everyone's free to their own opinion. The protection of the adult is a particularly sensitive issue, especially if not referred to in the context of protecting the physical or maybe I believe he's going more for the legal, but in my opinion, whomever, I believe this is a man writing this, I believe he's got a religious bent, so it's going to bias it a little, which is it's fine. Everybody's got their own way of thinking. Okay, let's go back. It said, context of protecting the physical or the financial position of the subject, but in relation to his or her psychological integrity. Yeah, that's lacking a lot in Scientology. I'm not saying every Scientologist, which is by definition a very vague concept. We run serious risk in qualifying any action lacking scientific meaning as fraudulent activity, something that is a common element in all religions in any coordinate space-time. Oh, look at this, you guys. He's got a 33. But that, I just noticed that there's other numbers too. It's interesting, though. It should therefore be demonstrated that the test is perceived as deceptive in a subjective manner, but the Scientologists use it not only as one of the instruments of proselytism, but also for themselves as an indicator of development along their religious path. Hold on, guys. Okay, I got to remember I was at religious path. Let's just look something up. And I'm almost done. We're almost finished. Hold on. Okay, I just wanted to look this up real quick. What's inside a $5,000 Scientology e-meter? So it's $5,000 in 2018. Just curious. It's a lot of dough. Okay, I'm going to go back. It is appropriate to repeat little more than a means of access to the confession and not the only means of progression in this religion. It is one of the modes of religious proselytism, free of charge. Oh, there's nothing free there. Nothing free in Scientology, which may induce individuals to question themselves and can direct them towards Scientology. The test is, in fact, integrated into the practice of the teachings of Hubbard and has been the objective of measuring the personality. This is a good paper, but I think he should have done a little more research. But, it's good. The level of self-awareness and success in life. Since it is a spiritual center, even assuming that the subjects do not know they are being confronted with a religion in the common sense of the word, there is no doubt that they cannot expect the scientific approach of psychological or psychotherapeutic practices, but that they would receive a spiritual or metaphysical assistance. Another alleged offense is that of conspiracy. This offense also requires proof of an intention prior to the preparation of the crime, which, to be punishable, must be characterized by one or more material facts. In the case in question, it should be proven that the basis of the activities of Scientology in France is not religious, but fraudulent acts concerted by the group. Thing about it is they do a lot of compartmentalization. Not everyone knows what's going on. I bet Rinder did, though. The offenses are therefore the same as those alleged in the Italian case, but profoundly different in the legal and political context of the two countries. In Italy, the crime of plagio, or mental manipulation, has been decriminalized since 1981. Oh, isn't that great, you guys? So there's no mind control going on. Isn't that great? While in France in 1996, a parliamentary committee drafted a report on sex, including Scientology among them, And in 2001, the law was passed against sectarian movements and mental manipulation. Yeah, it looks like that really worked out, didn't it? The different legal framework and policy interventions have affected the assessment of the case. Let me conclude by emphasizing that the issues raised by these judgments are of particularly interest to the jurist, as in the study of contemporary religious groups, one of the most difficult problems is the approach to these movements with the appropriate theoretical framework. The current social issues arising from religious groups, not formed according to traditional rules, require the lawyer to deal with this phenomena in a careful manner and to avoid, first, the construction of a completely open system. It's not open, it's about the most closed system there is. Easy prey to exploitation. You should ask some of the children of Scientology that, or the ones that are in there now. And secondly, to impose what has become an obsolete legal framework. The management of diversity, cultural and religious, is, in fact, one of the major challenges of our time, especially in our democratically structured societies. The novelty in this contemporary world is the rise of the politics of identity, the result of a mature theoretical awareness linked to the inability of managing modern social dynamics according to obsolete patterns of inclusion and exclusion. Scientology is all about that. Go listen to the song by Pink Floyd, Us and Them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. And that will be it for now. I'm going to leave a link to the PDF in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. And have an amazing day or an amazing night wherever you are. Peace.